Hello. Discuss is titled Engendering Citizenship. In this module, first we will discuss about various aspects of the concept of citizenship. Further, we will delve into the interlinkages between state and democracy, especially in the context of citizenship rights. Further, we will discuss the differentiated citizenship rights in India, and we'll end with a broad discussion on gendered citizenship. Introduction. Citizenship is a complex concept which has a universal appeal. As Fogg argues, citizenship has both individualistic and collectivist elements which appeals to people universally. Liberals value citizenship because of the right it bestows, gives space to the individual not only to pursue their interest free from interference, but also enables them to intervene in policy matters by presenting their views to the governmental institutions. The notion of duties and responsibilities embedded within the notion of citizenship to political communities and natural environment appeals to the conservatives, while socialists have emphasized the democratic potential of citizenship. Further, Fogg argues that while the left initially perceived of rights of citizenship imbued within a capitalist logic that legitimized private property and class inequalities, but over the years, with the failure of communism, the decline of class organization, and the realization that all inequalities cannot be reduced to class, have led left to reconsider the rejection of citizenship and demand for equal citizenship rights. Feminists have also found citizenship a useful conceptual category to analyze the nature of women's oppression. Feminist analysis of gendered citizenship draws attention to the question of the nature of the community in which citizenship is exercised. Thus, poverty, discrimination, and exclusion can all undermine the benefits of citizenship. The module, titled Engendering Citizenship, is organized as follows. Section 1. Introducing citizenship, interlinkages between state and democracy. Section 2, citizenship debate in India. Section 3, differentiated citizenship rights in India, and Section 4, gendered citizenship, followed by the conclusion. Section 1, introducing citizenship, interlinkages between state and democracy. At its core, citizenship refers to the relationship between the citizens and the state within the context of rights and obligation, and it's based on the principles of inclusion and exclusion of the members. The definition conceptualized by Kimlicka and Norman incorporates both these positions. Citizenship is not just a certain status defined by a set of rights and responsibilities, but also as an identity. While it is an expression of one's membership in a political community, the membership is limited. Many groups such as blacks, women, aboriginal people, ethnic and religious minorities, gay and lesbian all feel excluded from the normalized common culture despite possessing the common rights of citizenship. This exclusion leads to political inequality that limits their ability to exercise. Thus, political inequality operating through these structures limit the potentiality of actors engaging actively for realizing their rights. Further, the exclusions operate in connection with each other, which hamper the ability to claim their rights. Feminists have argued that the expansion of citizenship to women and the provision of conditions in which women could act as citizens have come as a result of a long struggle by women. Feminist critique is based on the assumption that the notion of citizenship is increasingly subject to social and legal differentiation, producing new forms of gradational or hierarchical citizenship. While citizenship appears to be an inclusive, universalistic concept, in reality all state citizenships are not equivalent, nor all state citizenship allocated in equivalent ways. Discussion in the above highlights the complex nature of citizenship rights, as though it promises universal rights, in experience it is exclusionary. Further, in the theorization of citizenship, state and democracy becomes a central focal point. Jayal argues that there is a strong link between the state and democracy in context to citizenship rights. The first is an argument that without an effective state, there cannot be no democracy, as a state alone can create conditions for the effective exercise of citizenship rights. The other argument is that it is the states and not the societies that destroy democratic institutions. Thus, there is a need for strong civil society as a bulwark against potentially authoritarian societies. Granting and maintaining citizenship rights is thus rather a bureaucratic exercise. As As Roy states, it is challenging and a long drawn-out process of identifying, enumeration, putting in place efficient and effective identification regimes and documentation practices, which in turn is associated with the exercise of state power and state formulative practices. Thus, it is the state and its bureaucratic machinery that provides frameworks to decide who a citizen is and what are its rights and responsibilities. Jayal further highlights the 6 factors that put a limit on effective participation and exercise of citizenship rights. It includes 1. Binary construction of public and private spaces, where the private sphere is sometimes placed beyond the reach of the state action, which limits the experience of citizenship rights by members such as women, children, elderly, disabled, and many more. Dependence by the state on capitalists for effective capital accumulation, which curtails the role of the state in controlling capitalists and their policies that exacerbate inequality. Decline of effective political parties. Political parties play out their policies and programs in the context of grabbing power, and in this strategy they fail to address the concerns of the citizen. 4. Increasing concentration of power in the executive branch of the government, which does not allow for effective governance for the realization of citizenship rights. 5th, concentration of powers, be it executive, legislature, and judiciary, leading to state intervention taking form of a multiplication of policy networks and fragmentation of implementing agencies. Expansion of the law and order and surveillance mechanisms. As Singh and Roy argued that for long, various kinds of surveillance tools have been used to mark and locate citizens. Specifically, Roy states that in recent years, digitalized and biometric identification systems have made identification regimes more efficient but also intrusive than the older paper-based documentation regimes for their potential for surveillance of citizens. Additionally, on the societal front, the limit on effective democracy within the society emerged from inequalities in social and economic relations and caste and class, gender, and ethnicity expressions. Social relations of dominance and subordination tend to distort democracy such that the voices of the powerful erase and the demands and concerns of the powerless. The expressions get expressed in the formal structure of democracy, the elections. These singularly or in a combination can effectively reduce the experience of citizenship rights within society. Further, the logic of democracy can also be a mechanism that would limit effective democracy. How does it happen? Jayal argues that while democracy creates a channel for political participation, it limits and also controls their impact. Extensive democracy makes democracy less sensitive to the secular democratic principles on which the nationalist elite grounded the state. As one of the major principles that democracy works on is majoritarianism. In the end, a game of numbers. Such a context can be hugely problematic. Jayal argues that what these processes achieve is the effective disfranchisement of a large sections of citizens. Thus, while all categories of citizens are constitutionally equal participants of a democratic polity, they do not exercise and experience rights of citizenship. So the question that arises, how does one analyze citizenship discourse in India? I believe that one has to begin with analyzing the state in India and its relationship with society by situating it within 1. The socio-historical context, 2. The paradigms of state intervention, and 3. The shifts in the strategy with regard to policy plans and programs in different periods. Such a contextualization is crucial as every government operates within a specific social matrix which circumscribes state action and determines the possibilities of change. Such historical positioning is important as the relationship between the state and the underlying social structures is a complex problem in a nation having a colonial history such as India. Section 2. Citizenship debate in India. Within the citizenship debate in India, the important scholars who have made notable contributions, including political scientists, sociologists, feminists, include Rajni Kothari, T.K. Uman, Partha Chatterjee, Atul Kohli, Sunil Khilani, Rajiv Bhargava, Gurpreet Mahajan, Nirja Jayal, Nivedita Menon, Neera Chandoke, Anupama Roy, and many other scholars, thus reflecting a diverse group. It could be stated that the debate itself started from the mid-1980s within India and focused on 4 important issues. 1. How our citizenship rights got institutionalized within India. 2. What is the nature of the Indian community that either enhances or curtails, depending upon the context, the experience of citizenship rights. 3. The relationship of the state with civil society and its implications for democracy and the realization of citizenship rights. And 4. The experience of differentiated citizenship rights in India, conceptualized as gendered citizenship, citizenship of Dalits, tribes, and citizenship. In the arguments, it becomes clear that to understand how citizenship rights were framed within the Constitution of India, one has to analyze the politics of constitutional framing, how democratic institutions were established within India, and how the socio-economic structures of Indian society determined the manner in which citizenship discourse was framed and experienced. Roy, focusing on the role of the Constitution, argues that the ideas of justice, freedom, equality were included as the foundational principles of a democratic society India, and that is what the Constitution was expected to usher in within India. Roy states that the nationalist elite believed that Republican democratic project would balance the precarious balance between the national political community and the social cultural communities on the one hand and the abstract individual citizen on the other. Such balance has been tested increasingly in the past years by claims emphasizing one over the other, as has been the case in Assam, Jammu and Kashmir and other parts of India where the contestations about citizenship has been a matter of concern. Roy further states that there have been an increasingly face-offs between the concept of citizenship embedded in the Constitution and the hegemonic project of nation building, which she argues has continually defined membership of the nation in exclusionary terms. There are strict rules, written and unwritten, with regard to who are considered as citizens. One could state that within the Indian state, citizenship was established as 1, a legal status, and 2, as an organizing principle for a sovereign nation and democratic political society. Within this context, the identity claims of the cultural and religious community on the one hand and that of the national and political community on the other acquired has been in loggerheads, leading to tensions in citizenship. Such tensions have seen its manifestations over the years after independence in riots, clashes, movements and campaigns. Why and how does such contestations happen? Khilnani states that to understand such contestations, one need to analyze how did the process of democracy ushered in India. He argues that in India, the constitutional democracy based on universal suffrage did not emerge from popular pressures for it within the Indian society. By this he means that it was not wrested by the people from the state, it was given to them by the political choice of the intellectual elite. The reason for such an argument is that the Constituent Assembly was an unrepresentative body, around 300 men representing provincial legislatures, upper caste Brahmin elites within the Congress. It is important to note that the Constituent Assembly, with many of its representatives of the dissenting voices, was not a sovereign body. As B.R. Ambedkar in one of the Constituent Assembly debates mentioned that the Constitution of India was embedded in a fundamental contradiction, where in the political sphere Indian citizens would have equality and in the economic and the social life they would have inequality. Thus, in politics, the principle of one man, one vote would be recognized, whereas in social and economic arenas, life would be structured on the lines of caste system where people would face inequality. The caste system, a hierarchical system of ascriptively segmented occupational and endogamous groups, manifested differential distribution of power, privileges, and alternatively disabilities sanctified by the dominant Brahminic religious tradition. Colonial intervention did not do away with the unequal structures, rather within the evolving structures of the colonial rule, the upper ruling strata of society consisting of the Brahmins and other upper caste were empowered, enlarged, and even nationalized. It is upon such unequal social, economic and political structures democracy promising political equality was established. As with the contestations over social, political, citizenship rights and 2 other fundamental issues of tensions in India's politics, the first line of tension is between the powers of the central state, popularly known as the center, and those of the provinces or the regional states. Extensive powers relating to military, emergency provisions and fiscal domains were bestowed on the center. The Constitution left the social and economic reform to the regional legislatures, but unfortunately without necessary financial resources to implement them, thus rendering them vulnerable to the pressures of the local political, social and economic elites, as argued by Aloysius. The second enduring contestation concerning citizenship is the grant of universal rights to all was offset by recognition of historical injustice suffered by particular communities. This recognition was realized in the form of principle of positive discrimination, policy of reservation of government jobs and educational places based on caste, gender, disability and region. What did such a policy imply? It implied that the language of rights in India was structured in groups and collectivities who demanded particular interests within the nation. The effect of such a policy was to weaken the pressure to accord universal rights and to encourage demands for special dispensations for selected groups. Indian politicians further followed the policy of controlling public resources for personal advantage and for distribution to one's followers. It was the regional legislatures that had the power to determine which groups and which interests, who exactly was eligible for the benefits of reservation, giving local politicians a limitless resource for political manipulation. The constitution and the politics it sanctioned thus reinforced community identities rather than sustaining a sense of common citizenship based on individual rights. Such a policy was a bedrock of diverse experience of citizenship rights, where it was to be understood as graded, hierarchical and differentiated as argued by Brass. The distinctiveness of Indian politics, argues Brass, stems from different social forces within the Indian social structure that include 1. The issue of control over agrarian resources, including control over land and workforce, whereby rural dominant classes control the state. Social fragmentation associated with caste, which permeates Indian politics. The center locality religion, thus it becomes necessity for those who wish to build power in the state and national context to maintain direct or indirect links with those in control of local structures of power. As Roy argues that while pan-India discourses of developmentalism and constitutionalism became the basis on which the nationalist elite staked its claim to usher the nation to a common destiny, it sought to preserve and reinforce community-centered social existence, recognizing the community, religious, cultural as an autonomous social and political unit, determining civic life in the nation. Community membership thus became a relevant consideration for differentiation among citizens. Social equality was sought to be achieved by assuring by the state that while the claims of the community to difference would be observed, there would at the same time be an assurance of sameness among communities. But history has revealed that the Indian state has fallen short of its claims. Bardhan argues that there are structural forces in Indian society, entrenched social classes, whose actions constrain the political elites from implementing policies against the former's interests. These structural forces then limit and constrain the experience of citizenship and leads to increased political instability and violence. The social fragmentation of a heterogeneous society, the persistence of local structures of power independent of government control, and the importance of inter-level linkages in Indian politics are powerful forces that prevent the experience of full citizenship rights of people. Pervasiveness of poverty, limiting the experience of citizenship. Jal argues that among the goals of social transformation prioritized on the state's agenda at independence, secularism, development and welfare are central to the discourse of citizenship. The philosophy of state welfare in India was from its very inception grounded in ideas of charity, paternalism and benevolence, and therefore has proved to be singularly unreceptive to challenges couched in more egalitarian terms of claims of rights. The disjuncture between the location of rights to liberty in the justiciable fundamental rights chapter of the Indian Constitution and location of welfare rights in the non-justiciable directive principles of state policy reaffirms this perspective. The model of development adopted by India was at once economically iniquitous, environmentally unsustainable, and politically less than democratic in its denial of the rights of equal citizenship. Experience over the decades since independence has shown that the ideology of liberal neutrality adopted by the state has proved to be hopelessly inadequate to the task of managing a culturally plural society. India's economic development strategy did not address the issue of poverty adequately until the 1970s. Sharivag argues that the Indian war on poverty included poverty alleviation programs that failed miserably to address the issue. The reasons include programs were palliative in nature, which did not include programs that could challenge the unequal structures of the society, such as landed caste elite. Policies were formulated in New Delhi, the capital centers, to be implemented at the state and local levels within the existing bureaucratic structures. The anti-poverty programs thus remained a supplement in the broader economic development strategy, which continued to avoid radical institutional solutions to poverty and inequality. The belief that benefit of growth and development would ultimately trickle down gradually to the poor remained institutionalized. But the persistence of widespread extreme and endemic poverty in India after more than 60 years of independence raises fundamental issues regarding the nature of citizenship rights experienced. The poor include urban informal unorganized laborer, rural poor who are mostly intermediate and low caste status, landless agricultural laborer, and the small peasantry with tiny plots of land with holdings that are inadequate to provide for a subsistence for a household population dependent on their produce. Within this population, a large proportion is made up of women, low caste and tribal population. It is argued that when the state through its policies are not able to provide minimal needs of its citizens, then one starts questioning the nature of citizenship which is experienced by its citizens. A set of arguments developed by Gurpreet Mahajan and Andre Bete links the state and civil society with society and democracy. The state articulates laws that objectively would represent conditions necessary for promoting equal citizenship, and civil society operates in accordance with the established systems of laws and rights so as to promote claims of equal citizenship. In a society marked by systemic discrimination, strict adherence to the principle of formal equality and rule by impersonal laws may not be enough for promoting the ideal of citizenship. The latter entails the distribution of assets and opportunities in a way that diverse groups can have access to them. So long as socially valued assets remain the monopoly of some groups, the principle of formal equality may hinder the realization of equal citizenship. Section 3. Differentiated citizenship in India. Complexity within the concept of citizenship has led to many Indian political theorists, including Jayal and Bhargava, to engage critically with the theorization of citizenship rights, where they argue that the presence of sharp economic disparities and inherited social inequalities such as class, caste, gender, ethnicity and language are major factors that restrict the full enjoyment of citizenship rights, thereby discussing the concept of differentiated citizenship rights. For Bhargava, differentiated citizenship rights functions on the argument that though in principle citizenship entitlements are available to everyone, they are unequally distributed. One's location within the social structures based on class, caste, gender, ethnicity, region, language limits the possibility of engaging actively in the public sphere and for accessing one's rights. Whereas Bhargava locates his theorization of citizenship within the discourse of public sphere, Jayal structures it in terms of disenfranchisement of large sections of citizens. According to him, in recent times, citizenship theory necessitates debate on passive and active citizens and the idea of differentiated citizenship. On the passive and active citizen debate, Bhargava argues that the passive citizen is a recipient of certain benefits from the state, which includes protection, basic necessities and liberties. A passive citizen hardly plays a role in the public sphere and is thus not a political citizen. The active citizen, on the other hand, positively engages with the state and the ruling elite to negotiate for its rights and thus is crucial for a vibrant public sphere. The idea of differentiated citizenship for Bhargava is based on the principle that citizenship entitlements are unequally distributed. According to Jayal, the debates on the processes that undermine citizenship rights focus on two ways. One, the absence of public enforcement of universalistic legal order, where the state fails to ensure the enforceability of constitutionally guaranteed rights of citizenship, and two, absence of social conditions that make possible the effective exercise of citizenship. The presence of sharp economic disparities and inherited social inequalities is a countervailing factor. Further to Jayal, the idea of differentiated citizenship implies disenfranchisement of large sections of citizens through two interrelated processes. One, the absence of a proactive state that could ensure the enforcement of constitutionally guaranteed rights of citizenship, and two, absence of those social conditions that would enable one to exercise citizenship effectively. The experience of differentiated citizenship rights are located within the context where the state is unable to address the social conditions that make possible the effective exercise of citizenship rights, thereby rendering formally equal citizens to experience unequal rights. Section 4. Gendered citizenship. Gendered citizenship has to be conceptualized as challenging the public-private divide. Feminist scholars have theorized that male domination and female subordination is structured by the strict separation of hierarchical spheres, male public and female private. This notion is based on the patriarchal ideology is central to the understanding of gendered sexual inequality. Thus, the re-articulation of the public-private divide within the society provides one of the keys to challenging women's exclusion at the levels of both theory and praxis. Such an analysis involves the disruption of its gendered meaning, recognition of the ways in which public-private divide is socially and politically constructed. This binary is fluid rather than fixed and acknowledges a feminist analysis of how in practice each side impacts the other. Within the nation-state, social divisions such as class, race, disability and sexuality and caste intersect with gender either to aggravate or modify its impact on women's citizenship status and potential to realize it. Feminist critique of citizenship hinge on two issues. One, the need to challenge the notion of community, and two, the need to break the binaries of private and public which have structured the theorization of citizenship rights. On the first point, Aito's argument is crucial. She states that citizenship studies of women, sexual minorities, disabled or ethnic minorities have made it clear that even within a community of full members, as defined by Marshall, there are social and legal differentiations that make citizenship gradational or hierarchical. Feminists thus argue that the dominant conception of citizenship, among others, is gender blind. By focusing on the uniform and equal application, it fails to take into cognizance of the fact that modern societies are steeped in patriarchal traditions which make for differential male domination and privileges. This analysis highlights the fact that citizenship operates on the principles of inclusion and exclusion of citizens. Specifically for women, membership of a community, even on the basis of the idealized and rarely realized liberal notions of citizenship rooted in individual rights, does not guarantee rights. Further, feminists have argued that citizenship operates on the binary principles of public and private, productive, reproductive, economic, cultural, whereby relegates women to the reproductive, private, cultural sphere, and where the space of citizenship becomes increasingly identified with male and public activities. The binary of the public-private, argues Yuval Davis, 1997, citing theorization of Pateman, Grant, are historically created. Pateman has earlier stated that the classical theories of citizenship divide the sphere of civil society into private and public, and that this has laid the foundation of a common sense understanding of the Western social order and the political order. Women and family are located in the private domain, which is then not seen as politically relevant. These set of ideas have in turn got reflected in the theorizations of citizenship down the line. Grant adds to this analysis by arguing that the foundation theories of both Hobbes and Rousseau portray the transition from imagined state of nature into orderly societies exclusively in terms of what they both assume to be natural male characteristic, aggressive nature of men in Hobbes and the capacity of reason in men in Rousseau. Women were not part of this process and are therefore excluded from the social and remain close to nature. Later citizenship theories followed these assumptions as given. Thus, Mahajan and Roy argue that while the public and private distinction was essential for the assertion of the liberal notion of citizen as an autonomous individual, it has also led to the identification of the private with the domestic. Such a conception has played an important role in the exclusion and subordination of women. In particular, Mahajan argues that identification of women's interest with the private is used as a major mechanism of women's historical subordination. As the private and public are governed by patriarchal principles, demystifying and challenging the distinction is the first step towards women's liberation. Roy, continuing this argument, states that as citizenship has been for long exclusively viewed as a domain of men, thus property, women's identities and their lives have either been excluded from or subsumed within a purview of state-citizen relations. The concerns have been examined instead primarily in relation to cultural institutions in the realms of family and community. Not only does this overlook the impact of women on political institutions of law and citizenship, it also fails to acknowledge how closely these institutions are regulated by the state mechanisms. Thus, the gendering of citizenship draws attention to the way states constructs women primarily in the difference from men by formulating laws and policies specific to them and also by differentiating between them, as argued by Yuval Davis. Feminists have thus argued that citizenship rights of women should be analyzed by questioning their membership in a community and assessing the group rights and social difference. Further, the ways the binaries of public and private and active and passive has been constructed has led to the differentiated between different kinds of citizenship and one kinds of analysis in the works of Pateman, Yuval Davis, Lister, Mahajan, Tallius and Bacon, Ito, Roy. Further, the analysis should not be restricted, especially women's relationship with men, but also to their affiliation to local, regional, dominant or subordinate groups, the ethnicity, the material context, access to infrastructure and place within the household. Such a broad-based understanding of citizenship includes legal status, but should not be seen to be reducible to it alone. It exists on a wide spectrum involving a pools of rights that are variously offered, denied, or challenged, as well as a set of obligations that are unequally demanded. Gendered citizenship is thus a product of negotiation with the state and is an important area of contestation in India. Roy argues that the articulation of women as citizens was structured not only within the debates of liberty equality, but also religious and cultural communities. Such a process often leads to contesting markers of a person's identity as a citizen. What was happening was that Indian citizens seemed to have two or multiple identities as a citizen, one identifying her to be the national community, the other to the particular religious linguistic community she belongs to. Personal laws of respective religious communities govern matters relating to marriage, divorce, guardianship of children, inheritance affecting women most critically. Thus, wherever women's political rights as citizens clash with the traditional laws of the community, women's rights were sacrificed in the name of communal independence. Gendered citizenship incorporates four aspects of understanding of rights for women. First, it involves an assessment of the binaries of public and private. Is public only material, private only cultural? Gendered citizenship questions the way public is associated with material and private with cultural, and it is concerned with gendered access to infrastructure, housing and livelihood. Second, citizenship rights of women are framed between social structures of caste, class, ethnicity, which make these women experience the citizenship rights differently. Thirdly, gendered citizenship involves the conceptualization of this differentiation through the theorization of multiple patriarchies. As feminists have argued, there is no one patriarchy, but multiple patriarchies based on the structures of caste, class, ethnicity, religion, region. Further, in a country like India, where uneven distribution of poverty and resources is related to regional unevenness, citizenship rights also has a spatial dimension and are differentially experienced. Fourthly, political citizenship is understood as having right to vote. Does that make a woman a citizen? To what extent do formal rights give women substantive right as citizens? Also, the women have found space in formal politics. To which class and caste do they belong to? These are some of the questions that have to be addressed within the discussion of gendered citizenship. In this module on engendering citizenship, we have discussed about citizenship debate in India. Further, through this discussion, we have discussed about the complexity of citizenship rights, especially in the way it is experienced by large number of people who are vulnerable and at margins. Further, we have interrogated the relationship between gender and citizenship. Further, we have also looked at the gendering of citizenship rights, especially in the context of constitution, state and democracy. Thank you.